for me personally, in not understanding the piece, is what gets me to ask more questions and knock on more doors and try to open them for the answers. And if I can't, I'll kick it open.
In the Moment podcast, Clifton Collins Jr. Great to see you. Thank you so much for jumping on and doing this episode with us. I've been a fan of your work for a really long time, and I'm excited to hear your process about how you approach acting, just experiences you've had that have been enriching, enlightening, lessons you've learned. This is called In the Moment podcast. You know, as an actor myself for the last 15 years, when I finally felt like I got a handle on how to act, so much of it was about prioritizing the moment that you're in. So when we get to have a discussion, that's kind of how I like to feel, is just in the moment. So not really the most planned out, structured conversation, series of questions or anything. It's just going to be more of a free-flowing discussion. So I'm excited for our audience to hear what you have to offer. But thanks so much for joining, man. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, man, my pleasure.
Okay, so I'd like to start from, I want to hear your story kind of getting into acting. As far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, I think your grandfather was an actor as well. And I kind of wanted to ask you not only about him and his influence and how much that probably affected your interest in acting as a pursuit or as a serious consideration for your career, but what was the first time where you, as Cliff, whether it was your grandfather or not, that you were associated with acting? Was it through a movie? Was it through an experience? And then what was your response to the feeling that you got in that first encounter?
Gosh, I think just being a class clown. You know, because you take a moment that happens in class that is usually inspired by the teacher, and then you improvise and you jump in the moment and you turn it into something else, and you usually get a big laugh and detention. So I think that was like, oh, this is awesome. It was awesome if I got to laugh and the joke landed. If it didn't land, then it sucks. Then you're stuck in detention for bombing, essentially. I mean, you still get attention if it lands, but at least I've got the those vibes of what an entertainer feels from like the applause or laughter of an audience, a group.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I can relate. I was definitely dubbed the class clown, and had many detention hours as well. How early was it that you became that class clown? Was it real early on?
It was really early on, but I didn't actually start to reap the benefits and the joys of it till I went to Loyola High School in Los Angeles. It was a college prep school, so the stakes are cranked up because you're in a college prep school, and I shouldn't be going to detention, but I did. I took acting and got a B, and I took Spanish and got a B too. So it's like Cheech Marin sings about. But in regards to the family lineage and the legacy, all the kids, all the siblings and cousins had to have a creative education on top of an academic one, because my grandfather couldn't read or write, so it was very important that we had some kind of education. He started entertaining at the age of 7. My great-grandparents on both my grandmother and my grandfather's side were entertainers in the Mexican vaudeville circuit in Texas called Las Carpas. And then my great-great-grandparents were also entertainers. And then my great-great-grandfather goes back to Spain, 1853, and he went to Mexico to entertain. Like, he was classically trained, as was my great-grandmother.
Wow,
I've got 5 generations.
That's definitely the most robust family lineage of acting I've ever heard of. That's
Barrymores have a very big one.
Well, yeah, I grew up in Texas. I don't know if you knew that. I grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas, and that's actually where I live now. Right out of high school, went to New York City, and then I studied acting there and worked professionally as an actor for 11 years there, and then moved back to Texas in 2020. And that's when I started an acting school, but also my film production company. So we were talking about this a little bit beforehand about like writing, directing, producing your own work. I know you've done that many times. So I'm in the same kind of boat with that, but Texas. So did you grow up in Texas, or was it just you had experience with your family, being in Texas before you were around, or what's your experience with Texas in the film scene?
My experience, well, traveling to Texas to shoot like Walker Ranger with Chuck Norris, or
Oh yeah.
some of the other gigs that shot there. That was one thing, but um, I think on a bigger note, I would travel back to San Antonio to visit the old places that my grandparents grew up in. Because they got married at 15 and 17. My great grandmother, they had a family troupe called Los Hermanos Gonzalez, which means the Gonzalez brothers, even though it was my great aunt Carmen, my great grandmother Micaela, and my great uncle. So it was the three of them. So it was really just one brother and two sisters. But they danced for Pancho Villa and his men. And when Pancho Villa declared war, um, they escaped and crossed the border. There was like an ongoing nickel bribe to cross the border. It wasn't like a big secret or anything. Um, or else they would have wrote it into the screenplay, but it's just not that dramatic. But they had to escape because their cousin was General Huerta, and he was the guy that Pancho Villa was going to war with. So they knew once he found out that they were related to General Huerta, they'd all be killed. So they had to escape and go to Texas, and that's where my great grandmother met my great grandfather, Jose Senior Gonzalez, and he was a trumpet player and did a lot of stuff. So they created a giant family troupe. So even with all that history, I started tap in and doing ballet at the age of 7. Um, Grandpa wanted me to get into acting, but it's not something I was interested in. I didn't know being a class clown and acting were very closely related. It was in high school. I think I started to realize I could make a little bit of money doing that, albeit most of my work's pretty dramatic. So I think that's where that started, and then you start commercial auditioning, and being somebody who's pretty green, the commercial audition room is such a. You don't have these in-person meetings anymore, but you've got like a 5 to 7 minute window. You might be by yourself, you might be with two other actors, and you've got just seconds to leave a mark. So it was in that space that I learned to make an impact quickly, whether it's sticking to the page and the dialogue, or being even more inventive and different by going off the dialogue, which you might get in trouble, but you might actually shine as well. And in those instances that I did shine, I'd always end up booking it. So I just realized that being a little bit different might get you somewhere. And it's more
Mm.
true to you as well. It's more true to yourself.
And I like to ask this question, and it's a bit of a, I guess, loaded question, but when asking about, because obviously I consider acting an art form, and
Mm.
sometimes it can be hard to define that, an art form. What is art? But what is art to you? In Cliff's definition of that, what is that?
Things that I don't understand that inspire. And I think you can be inspired and still understand something. But I think for me personally, in not understanding the piece, is what gets me to ask more questions and knock on more doors and try to open them for the answers. And if I can't, I'll kick it open, or I'll create my own door, or I'll go on my own adventure. But it's in the and I think a very good example that plays into this for me personally is having recently worked with Ari Aster, because his work just is mind-boggling, and it took me I can't even accumulate all the hours that I spent hunting down all his shorts, listening to Q&As, and it was in the Q&As both by his answer and both by things he chose not to answer that I learned so much. Also by watching him react to certain questions to know what hit certain nerves. I was literally just trying to figure out this man's brain and his creative soul. It was so um, just over the top, out of grasp for me. It seemed at the time. It took me a while to really catch up to where he was, and I think it was in the reshoots that I was finally like locked in with him. So to me, he's like the epitome of art in regards to directors I'm looking up to at this present moment. He's so just
Yeah,
no.
yeah, in originality, in the way that you're an actor, it sounds like, because this is what I do as well, is, you're picking up on the behavior of those around you and then kind of tracing it back to the psychology in a sense and trying to get, how can you encapsulate a person? You can't, but to get that, I want to connect with you. I want to get to know you a little bit. And as actors, I think, I mean, I've heard it said, like, don't ever lose your fascination of people, and you'll be fine. Like going through your career and making choices. Has that been something that resonated with you as well over the years?
That's a huge point. I don't want to gloss over that one 'cause it's so important. I was talking to a dear friend of mine that does a lot of branding, and on big productions. And we were talking about the type of projects that are getting greenlit right now, and it seems like so many are like these doom and gloom type of films, these sensational things that kind of speak to the moment, which is also art. Art reflects the times, in my opinion, and we try to tell our story and teach the lesson within the boundaries of what's happening. In Grandpa's case, it's a big story about family and empathy and love, and in the second families, you find that aren't blood related, that might even take better care of you than families. But the Ari Asters, the Guillermo del Toros, the Steven Soderberghs, they're so far and few between, and then you're going to have those gigs that you got to pay the bills. So it's so hard to have some kind of creative, collaborative, human thing going back and forth, because now you're more kind of like just they know you're a racehorse that can get the job done. It's not about coming in first or winning or any of this other stuff, but just he can do the work. You don't got to direct him too much, and he's good for it. Just let him go. Whereas in an Ari Aster, you're going to get into the nuts and bolts. You're going to have these profound heart-to-heart conversations. You're going to be delving into your soul. But like Sam Jackson told me, he goes, not every gig you do is going to require that soul purging or that kind of depth. Although we long for it as artists, we long for it as actors, we long for it for that connection, that humanity. At the depth of, at the heart of any real actor is empathy, a deep sense of empathy. Those are all the greats, So unfortunately, not all the projects are going to make you feel that way. So it's really hard. And I was talking to Will Patton yesterday, and he's got some projects he's looking at, but he said, like what I'm saying, I think what we're all saying is we're really looking for some material that you read and makes you go, I want to do this. I don't care if they don't have any money. I don't care if it's not a payday. I want to be the voice of this character. I will get up every morning and stay up late every night for this character. And those are hard to find.
Those directors, those artists, those projects are few and far between, right? That they don't always come around that way. And it is a business, and you do have to find a way to make a living and do your art. It brings me to wanting to ask about a specific project.
Please.
And before I ask this one, I got to give you a little bit of a story, because I hinted at it earlier, but you specifically as an actor are really, really have been really influential on me, because I didn't start to really take acting seriously until I was about a junior in high school. I had really had some missed opportunities to do some plays in middle school and stuff. Like, we would rehearse, and then at last minute the show would get canceled, and nobody cared except me. Of course, I'm like, no, I really want to do this, and then got into high school, and then I was talking to my theater teacher, and I was like, I think I want to do this. I think I really want to do this. I had been in a couple plays that year, and really enjoyed it, and kind of got swept up in the circumstances a little bit. You have that feeling for the first time, like, I'm affected by something that isn't real. Like, what is this thing, And she was there to kind of guide me along, and I'm very grateful for that. But it wasn't until I saw Capote that everything kind of changed for me. One, because I had just watched Along Came Polly, and then I watched Capote right after. And I was just kind of like, how's that the same person with Philip Seymour Hoffman? But when I was auditioning for schools and I was taking it more seriously, I was told to, in the New York school, I was told to do the contrasting monologues, whatever. But it was a film and TV kind of on-camera acting training program. And they said, we didn't want you to do a dramatic monologue and a comedic monologue, both from film and TV. I sense now looking back, I'm like, I wouldn't do that. Like, that's not the greatest way. Cause it's like, you're kind of setting up the actor to maybe copy a performance. And I am ashamed to say that I may have done that with you, because when you're obviously you're playing this real character who goes through, and finally that's kind of what Truman Capote is after, is he's looking for your confession on that night so he can finish his book. And you guys are obviously connecting in this amazing way, and he's trying not to just be so out, like overtly selfish, and be like, just tell me what happened, because I really don't care, but I do. This tension that is so present in that film. But it was your speech that it just hit me, and it moved me, and it was so incredible. And I credit so much of that to the team, but if it wasn't for you, I may not have chosen that, fully copied you, and then gotten into the school, which brought me to New York, which my family didn't have any money, no connections. I didn't know any actors or anything. And it ended up being the most cost-effective place because I got the most scholarships for that particular program. So one, I just want to say, I mean it when I say I am a fan, but also your work really influenced and inspired me and what I'm doing now in my life. And I just wanted to say thanks, and I appreciate it. But to give you a little bit of a question too, is would you say Bennett Miller and the artists involved in that film, maybe Mark Pellegrino and these other guys that you got to work with, would you say that was a moment for you that was like, oh wow, there's so much meaning here, there's so much that I can sink my teeth into? Or what was the overall experience of it?
Without question. Well, one, thank you very much for sharing all that. Two, don't fuck it up. Glad to inspire. I want you to shine. I want you to shine.
Yes,
So
sir. You got it.
beautiful, beautiful thing is that I think that gives a value to every single artist, is whenever they hear they've touched even one person, especially someone such as yourself. So thank you for sharing that. That fuels me for probably the whole week. uh, um, I was I'll backpedal a little bit. I was doing this show for FX called Thief, for which I'd be nominated for an Emmy, and I was working with the late great Andre Brower. So beautiful, wonderful mentor, beautiful human, amazing actor, amazing father. Um, my grandfather was fighting cancer. We were shooting in New Orleans, and I was going to check in on him. It was like 8 o'clock at night. I had a night shoot, um, and I talked to him. He didn't sound particularly good this night, and he was just picking my brain about how work was going. And my grandparents were always people that I could, like, oh man, I can't believe this happened on set, or this happened, or this amazing moment. I'm like, let me call grandpa, let me call grandma. Like, hey, you ain't gonna believe what happened. And they have a way of reinterpreting it as a result of, performing since, 1933 to their end of days. All the history and wisdom and knowledge, it's all the same stuff. And he asked me, he says, Mule, he goes, so you doing good work? I said, yeah, grandma, yeah, everybody knows I do at least good work. And he goes, well, I want you to do better work. I want you to do better work. And I was like, oh my God, for some reason that hit me so hard. And I got choked up. I said, all right, thanks, Grandpa. Yeah, I'll talk to you soon. I'll call you tomorrow. I hung up. I got home at like 2 in the morning, 2:30. I had George Romero's new zombie film. I'm a huge Psycho fan of George Romero, Night of the Living Dead. And it was this new film with Dennis Hopper. And I'm friends with Dennis, rest in peace, who is a family friend since like the 60s. And then there was this other script that had Philip Seymour attached. I said, oh, Phil, shit. Chris Cooper was attached. I said, oh my God, Catherine Keener was attached. Like, well, shit, I need to read this now. So I ordered some coffee. I read it. I finished the script. It was a page turner. Dan Futterman wrote that, also an actor, an amazing actor, both comedic and dramatic, and brilliant writer, as you can tell. And I read it, and I was just like, I called my manager, dude, I'm sorry to leave this message at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I just read Capote. What do I got to do? I need to be this guy's voice. I'm this guy's voice. And that was that moment. I read it. I knew on the page. I told Andre Brower, I said, this is an Academy film without question. This is like, oh yeah? Because Andre and I talked about it years later, and he reminded me that story of me telling him. So that's where the journey started going after it. And it was hard because there's obstacles that got in the way. Hey, they're going to cast the guy. You better jump on it. well, this is a giant monologue. I need a lot of free time to get in this dark space. This isn't some shit I prepare while I'm at a traffic light,
Hmm.
or waiting for the pizza to get here. Like I need to delve and open up my heart and get into some pain here. So I didn't have time to read in cold blood, but obviously it will become a Bible, because I've got a window to record this audition. Um, my manager at the time, and this is not a good manager for anybody watching. Anybody that says, "Hey, they're going to hire the guy, you better hurry up." Manager's job is to create a safe space for you to have the time to prepare and not be angst ridden, unless you can use those emotions to fuel just passion and prep and not have the fear of that. I often do that. I change the scary shit. Any fear you have of going into a meeting is removed when you prepare. You prepare. You know the dialogue forwards and backwards. You know the emotions. You know where you're going. You know what your drive is. You know what your second take's going to be like, your third take, your fourth take, your fifth take. So if the director decides to direct you, you've already thought of it. Ideally, it's not always the case. Ari Aster's a perfect example. You can think of 1,000 ways he's going to think about 2050 shit that you miss. You're like, what the? How did that even happen? Normal directors, you might get it though. You put in the time. So my sister was friends with A.V. Cosman's cast and associate, and she was able to tell me, like, no, they're not shooting till this time. You got a little window, Clifton. And he goes, why don't you wait till you wrap Thief? Because and Thief wasn't one of those shows that, I'll just, I'll just learn my lines and it'll be cool. Like, I was committed to trying to be great. I was wanting to be really great. And I'm working with Andre Braugher. I'd hate to shine any less than I potentially could be next to this man. So it's difficult for me to multitask. And if it wasn't a passion project, an easy TV gig where you can just kind of not phone it in, but when you've been doing it this long, you can still give a pretty good performance and not have to lose your personal social life or any of that. Not that I go out every night, 'cause I do not. Unless it's to see mentors, actors, or musicians, or something artistic. So I had time to come home, and then I had an extra week to prep. And it was in fact that scene that you're speaking of. What's the name of the book? Which,
Wow.
as you know,
That's, yeah,
you personally know, it's a very painful audition. It's a very painful monologue.
absolutely. It's, yeah. I mean, so, well, that's, thank you for sharing that. That's really, really insightful. And I think for a lot of actors who are going to be listening, that's going to be also really helpful because it makes them feel less alone when the whole world is it's such a pressure cooker for an actor, whether it's your representation or it's just yourself. Sometimes that's more than enough to just throw you off your game. And then
Yeah.
all the other outside pressures of like, well, then there's the money. Well, then there's the potential acclaim. And then it's like, is this the right, am I the right character? And you can see like that can just bleed into the performance so much that it just becomes, well, it's not going to happen either way. So to be able to kind of get to that place where you can open your heart up and really get specific about, man, what did this Perry Smith guy go through, man? Empathizing with a killer. How do I do this? And then kind of speeding you up a little bit to production. What was it like working with Phil on all those scenes? The heart of the film is y'all's relationship. So, what was it like in the prep? Was there much prep of that? Was it just kind of, man, really moment to moment working through it? I know it was technically like an independent film that ended up becoming so widely acclaimed. But yeah, what was that like on set?
I first met Phil through John Ortiz, because they're
Mm.
both part of the Labyrinth theater company in New York. And Philip was just getting ready to do Jan de Bont's Twister. So Philip, myself, John Ortiz, we went to a coffee shop on Melrose and hung out. And so we were friendly. And then I got the offer. And interesting, even after I auditioned, I was still connected to the material. I was still prepping, even though I didn't have the offer, because I was so intrigued and driven to Perry Smith. I remember Taryn Manning coming over one day, and she saw in Cold Blood, the book, the DVD, other reading materials. She goes, "Oh my God!" He goes, "You got it?" I said, "No, I didn't." He goes, "Oh my, well, why don't you put all this shit away?" I said, "Because I'm intrigued and I'm studying. You do you, I'll do me. I'm having fun still." like a
Yes.
weirdo. I'm like, whatever.
You're
And
an actor.
yeah, I'm an actor, and I'm still prepping. And then I got the call that I got the offer. I said, great. Well, I'm going to keep prepping even faster now.
Hmm.
So I got a little bit of prep time at home. I went to Winnipeg. We had about 2 weeks rehearsal, which was really fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, Bennett swore we would never get to the what's the name of the book scene in rehearsal. That he wanted to save it for the camera. You know how they do that. And I'm like, okay, well, we could also save it for rehearsals because I nail it rehearsals. I'll nail it for the camera over and over and over. I can still do that. I can do it. It's like, no, no, no. Okay, whatever. So they were pretty intense. Uh, After about, we pushed a week, and I remember Bennett coming to me and saying, Clifton, we're going to push a week. Everything's fine with production. We just need a little extra prep time. I said, okay. I says, you can go home if you want. I said, go home. I said, I'm in the zone right now. I'm in Winnipeg, and it's a long trip home, and you get to see your friends. You decompress. You're not in that zone anymore. You're not dealing with Perry Smith issues or thinking about him as closely because I don't get to hang out with him now. I mean, I could still prep at home, but when you're in the eye of the storm and suddenly you get pulled out and you could take off the raincoats and you cool off, I'm like, hell no. I said, look, I'll stay on somebody's couch. If it's a money thing, you need to get me out of the hotel. I'll stay on somebody's couch. I'll get a little whole place to stay. I can't leave. No, no, you can stay if you want. I said, okay, great. I'm gonna stay. So we stayed. I stayed. And then Philip was the producer on it, so he was able to really create a very much a theatrical environment, so to speak. Meaning, it's kind of nice when the crew gets to talk in between setups because it's their way of connecting and bonding and like, hey, what'd you do this weekend? In the midst of getting ready to tackle these really important scenes. But I think there was so much writing on this. I think especially for Bennett and Philip. And Philip was incredibly insecure, as most artists are. But in this particular case, Philip was dropping an immense amount of weight. He was doing this very risque character with this very charactery voice that could come off quite campy if not executed perfectly. And I don't like to use a perfect word like that, but in this particular case, it's very fitting. And it was nerve wracking. So even the crew wasn't really able to speak in between setups. It was very quiet, which is it's a very interesting atmosphere to work in. Like a lot of these block shooting projects, you'll be doing a scene and almost everybody's talking. So you're kind of like, is this just like a MOS? Like, I know I'm Mike, but do I need to talk? Like, I don't have to do the dialogue. No, do the dialogue. Well, how's that going to work when everybody's talking? I mean, so you really get a sense of not mattering in some of these projects, these block shooting projects.
Right. Right.
So it's very like literally black and white contrast. Even working on Ari's thing because I was flying between two block shooting projects. Talk about a crew that was in sync and in the know of what's about to happen and come and what to be prepared for, and to not get in anybody's way and everybody doing their own job. It's quite magical. I think that's the perfect word for it. But in Capote's sense, we were able to, it gave both Bennett and Philip the freedom to, Philip was able to jump in and out as well if he needed to talk to me about, what was going on in a scene or something we were trying to figure out. So it was a very actor friendly environment for sure. And I think it needed to be that.
Yeah, and I think so much of that, and again, each set is its own unique environment, and that's obviously top down from the producing team, directing team to ultimately the actors who are living the story out with it between each other. Um, I wondered because you said, and to me, this is what that does. It really shows up in the freedom of the moment, freedom of the exchange, the intimacy of the connection, which again is the heart of the film, in my opinion. And so if you don't get that, you don't get the movie. It wasn't just, let's just do Truman's story. I mean, you just kind of go from beginning to end. It's not that. It's the story between the tension of I need this guy around me at all times and I need him to die. in a way. And this,
Yeah.
I'm on the precipice of literary genius and critical acclaim, and the parallel of that Bennett saw in Phil with that particular part and that particular time. And so much of that is writing, like you said, it's that delicate balance that you have to strike. I thought it was, you said the word perfect. I would totally co-sign that. It's one of those films, in my opinion, that just gets better with age and just blows me away more and more with each time that I see it. And I wanted to ask too, if like on the set of Jockey, which I thought was, you did such a beautiful work in that movie.
Thank you.
And I thought it was so free and so grounded and so lived in and so spontaneous. I wanted to ask you too, the environment of that set, or the preparation for that one particularly. Was it a similar thing? Was it different? I know every project's different, but what was the leading up to that one?
It was very different, in the sense of, Clint Bentley and Greg Queed are just a force. They are an amazing trilogy when the three of us get together, because I've done, I think 4 films with them total now. So I felt much more like maybe Philip did on the set of Capote, in regards to Jockey, because I was very much the outsider. I was from LA. I was the untrained actor, more or less. They're all New Yorkers. It was Philip and Bennett and Dan Futterman, who had been friends since they were like 16 years old. You know what I mean? So they had all that going for them. So with Greg and Clint, the work environment in Jockey was nowhere near as intense. We only had a crew of 9 people. We were working on a live racetrack with no horse wrangler. So there's a lot of things that really didn't make sense. And that all said, it was one of the most fulfilling, fun, truly collaborative pieces with no egos, that just made the whole experience quite special. It was one of those films where, you've got $350,000 budget, and you're shooting this thing in 20 days. So the original script was 60 pages. They know how I work, so they knew I would want to get there early to embed with the jockeys, speaking to your point of it feeling really lived in. I dropped to 143 pounds, which is always easier for me to do when I'm amongst my peers. In this case, it would be the jockeys. Because, when in Rome, I'm very quick to acclimating to my environment, culturally, tonally, in all kinds of different ways. So being with these guys, I really wanted the kinship of being a jockey, even though I don't deserve it in any way, shape, or form. So I wanted to do all the things they did. I was at their service. I told them on day one, hey, if there's any actor questions you want to ask, don't be shy with me. I don't care how dirty, how nasty, how un-PC. This is a safe space. I'm not going to get offended in any way, shape, or form. And then after that, I'm here to service you guys. Whatever you guys need, you need shoveling or helping with the horse or doing that. I want to be in the mix with you guys. And so, it doesn't matter how you talk to me. I could be you guys want to talk about the acting stuff, that's fine. But then I want to talk about your stuff and help with you guys. And hey, I'm free assistant. You know what I mean? I'm just here all day. And there's no ego. So that helped a lot. And also, I wouldn't have been anything without Greg and Clint and my 2 co-stars, Molly and Moises. You're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. But we rarely worked a full day. Adolfo RTP knows what he wants. Everybody knew what they wanted. Greg and Clint, like I was gathering information on scenes, on things that jockeys do. So I was able to go out in the field and do what I do while Greg and Clint are location scouting and working out the particulars of that. So then when we come together at night, we'd meet up in my room and go through the scenes. And I'd jot down all these different notes I had, and we'd incorporate them into the script if it made sense. Or they would take that and chew on it and spit out something more evolved. And that was such a fun, organic, honest way to work.
That's so special when you're able to capture that and everybody is creatively on the same page. I won't take up too much of your time. So one of the questions that I wanted to get to as well is what because to me, and this is just how I was ultimately trained in New York, like little background for me. I went to a 2-year conservatory. I think I just spent a lot of time becoming self-conscious as an actor, to be honest with you. And
What
then
does
I
that
didn't
mean
have an
exactly?
ability. Just I, uh, I think the program itself didn't really equip me to being a truthful, spontaneous, unpredictable kind of lifelike actor. I think I was just focused on myself while the camera was rolling and
And that made
trying to
you
do what I should do. Yeah. And so I didn't really even know that I hadn't maybe been trained properly, or that I hadn't learned how to bring out my own way, or whatever that might be, instinctively respond to what's going on in the imaginary circumstances. And so I had to I wasn't well equipped going into my career in the first few years. And then I found a program, Playhouse West, in LA. It was Playhouse West Brooklyn. And this is where I mentioned my buddy Jim Perrick to you. He went to Playhouse West for a long time, but then he ended up opening a school in New York. And this was like 2014 to 2017. So I was there for 2 years myself. But I feel like I left that program. It was a complete 180 for me. I really felt confident instinctively. I knew exactly what to do, how to approach a script, everything. I kind of found my way to approach the work that brought out the most authentic performance that I possibly could. And so for me, and the name of the podcast is In the Moment. So for me, there's nothing more exciting than that. Like, we can prepare all day long, but ultimately what I want to do is like never lose the excitement of, we can only do take one once, or take 19 once, right? Like, we could do 50 of them. I'm not so scared of that, but I want to make sure that we're living here right now. And I
Yes.
think Jockey really felt like that. It felt like you said, organic, with each other, really lived in, really together, that you're not afraid of whatever might come from the other actor that hits you in a certain way. Oh, and it's a surprising thing, and they're capturing that. And it felt like a lot of that ended up in the final cut.
There was a lot of that.
What's the value of the moment for you as an actor?
I mean, these beautiful, organic, honest moments. When Molly and I are at the rodeo, the whole scene when she just says, "Hey, who are you betting on?" Oh, I forget who I said. I don't know if it's the rider or the bull, but she says something. She says, "How long do you think?" I say, "Oh, so many seconds." And she says the amount of seconds, and that's exactly what happens. That was all improvised.
Wow.
That was not planned. There's these really I think a lot of actors can speak to this, especially on independent films. But when you do that kind of prep and everybody's there for the right reason, when you hit the sweet spot when these magic, unexplainable moments start to happen at least once a day, like that everybody notices. Like, people are in tears, or people are like celebrating, or like, how did that even happen? So it is so important. But getting back to your other point of the schools and how it made you self conscious, I think that's probably one of the biggest danger of any school, whether it be acting or a martial arts school. Stereotypically, you see this in all the movies. I study with so and so. Oh, yeah, well, I study with so and so. Let's fight. You can't become a product of the school. You're a craftsman. You're just there to pick up a couple tools. You got to look at it like Home Depot. You're going in to get some.
Yes,
You're going to
sir.
go out to build what you want to build, but you got the tools you need. You're not a part of Home Depot. Sure, you got your stuff there. I got some stuff there, but I got some stuff from this other thing, and this other place, and this other conservatory, and this other actor pal, and this other director that shared some beautiful wisdom that will keep with me forever. So and that you bring that to you.
Yes.
And you take all those tools that made you get all that, to get rid of all that stuff that made you do that, and steal their tools, because that's what you went there for in the first place. They want you to become a product of their environment, because then you become branded. You're their kid, so they get to own you,
Yes.
and you're going to constantly, it's a tattoo. You just got jumped in, but with fear, and that fear is it's a kiss of death, unless you can use that fear to drive through a performance and use it for prep. You know, I'm glad you came out of it, because I can tell you came out of it. Those are
Yeah. No,
huge
I just
lessons. So
think,
huge lessons to go
yeah.
that way and come back. Not every actor gets that. They usually get stuck there, and you didn't. So you're like kind of got some
Yeah.
superhero stuff.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, yeah, thank God that I did. And honestly, transparently, that's what this podcast is all about. It's what you just said. And it's about, you need to figure out your way of approaching acting to the point where no one is really quite doing it the same way you are. Because if I look at art as an outer molding of my inner life, then my inner life is as unique as anything. So the tools in which and the instincts with which I use to navigate a moment or navigate my prep or whatever, that's going to be as unique as I am. And it should be. It's not a cookie cutter approach. It's not math. It's not science. It's art. So we got to see what this signature of this artist might potentially be, and kind of setting up the elements so that can really thrive is kind of what I'm always trying to do. So this conversation has been very much that, in my opinion, and it's something that I'm really, really grateful for. I feel like I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, but I just, in closing, I know where I can find you, obviously, on social and in your career, following you and stuff. But if you had to give some either kind of just parting words for the audience, maybe there's other actors listening, or even just where they can find you or what's coming out next that you're excited about, anything you want to kind of leave us with before we conclude.
I'm really excited for Ari Aster's Eddington with Joaquin Phoenix and Emma Stone, Pedro Pascal, Austin Butler. It's a very, very special project. And I'm presently working on Lucky with Annette Bening and Anya Taylor-Joy, which has been very fun working with those two beautiful, insanely talented actresses. And I can be found on Instagram under Mr. Whoopass, MRWUPASS. I think it's so important, and this is it's so easy to talk about right now because I've been talking about it for like 4 or 5 days, is we got to stay focused on enjoying the process. You got to enjoy the process, whether you're doing rewrites on a screenplay that's personal or impersonal, or prepping a role. And the second you stop having fun and you're just trying to meet deadlines, you got to stop. Like I stop. I stopped the other day when I started jumping into a rewrite because I realized I was rewriting for the wrong reasons. I was trying to make a deadline. Like, I'm not enjoying the process right now. This isn't fun for me. And you got to get back to the fun spot. Once that happens, it's all gravy from there, because you'll get to the top of the mountain. You'll be prepped. You'll be able to do it all these different ways, and you'll do it your way. And getting back to the teachers, I think actors have to remember they're there to get something, to make them the best artist and human that they can be. Because I think innately, through just studying human nature and learning to become these characters, we become better humans. Because we develop compassion and empathy and all these different things that give us a deeper understanding of humanity. And you can't ever let a teacher take that away from you. I had a teacher that did a 6-week course that petrified the student. She said, "You are nothing without me. I'm going to make your career." I was like, whoa. I didn't come here to be spoken to like that. I came here to pick up a screwdriver and I'm out the door. You know what I mean? Creatively speaking. So I literally blocked out any stuff. But as a result, I'd have a scene partner that was petrified to go up. I'm like, who wants to go next? I'm like, me. She's like, no. I was like, what's the matter with you? No, she's teaching tonight. Because some nights her husband would teach, who was great. And then when she would teach, like, everybody was just mortified. And that's like having a parent that abuses you all the time. Mm-hmm. You want to be dealt with love and compassion and understanding. How am I going to learn when you're like yelling and intimidating and controlling and manipulating? No. So I had to protect myself from that kind of talk, all the while stealing the bits of wisdom that I desperately needed. She'd studied under Stanislavski, if I'm not mistaken. Or was it Meisner? Geez, I can't remember. It was so long ago. But in any case, when she was a great teacher, I was literally just taking what I needed and keeping her conditioning out of my head, because it was not healthy for me. And it was easy to put away because it was so aggressive. I was like, I grew up in a crazy aggressive family, violent. So that was kind of easy to deflect. But I felt bad for everybody around me that was starting to fall into the spell.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because those that are currently under the spell too in a class maybe that can help wake them up and say, maybe that's not what I need to be hearing, because I could not agree more or co-sign that thought anymore. And it's also why I'm passionate about trying to help actors become the best they can be and get on with it, and not be dependent and reliant upon a teacher or a class, but just to, like you said, get some tools and move on. So definitely aligned with you there. Once again, man, thank you so much for this conversation and for coming on and sharing your time and wisdom. And again, there's so much that I know we could talk about, but what you shared was just absolutely awesome and beautiful, and can't wait to get it out to those that are interested in hearing more. But yeah, thank you so much, Clifton Collins Jr. If you haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and do so. Share this with an actor that you think might get something from it, and thank you so much.
Totally, brother. Please, I'd love to come back. Let me know when you guys are ready. Maybe after Eddington, that might be a good revisit. That in itself would be a very long podcast. That would be fun. I think I went through a lot of growth on this long journey. I don't think I've had. This was like an ultimate test for me. This new one.
Yeah, I would love to have you back and us block out some maybe way longer time and just like really dig into it. I'm so down for that. And
that would be amazing
for extending that. But
maybe a nice
thank you so much, Cliff.
Yeah,
for sure. We'll definitely extend it next time. But
all right,
thanks so much, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.